And this is absolutely a test of nerves for Imagine Esports because they can win this game. If they can stall it out, they're in a position with the Ornn, with their late game scaling, they can absolutely win this, but they have to not panic. Like, they're already down a game. The finals are on the line here, but they have to stay cool and make the right decisions, make the right plays, and not overforce. Because ATS wants to force. They're riding high on the momentum. Like, they can see victory so close, but if they overreach, like the RE speed rush it down, there's gonna be the flash.
Oh, just lands onto the Leone. Here comes the fight starting off. Barbrager lands it onto the Ezreal. He's going to arcane shift down, but it is a dead Leone. Faded into the backline with the killer instinct. That's the 1v1, but the Kai'Sa goes down. This fight is over for Imagine Esports with the Kai'Sa dead. Shockwave is still up for Goodball, is going to land it onto one. Does pick off the Ezreal in the end, but with the Orianna dead. This is going to be the fight win. This is going to be the championship. This is going to be the Noxian Division win for Apes Together Strong. The Nexus is the only thing in their sight. And this one, ladies and gentlemen, it's over. Apes Together Strong 2-0, according to Cyanite's prediction in the pregame interviews. Randomonium hitting the Nexus, Blaney and Cyanite, they went through roster moves all season long. Their entire roster was shuffled, players swapping positions, leaving, but they bounced back with a formidable roster. They take the series, and they beat Imagine Esports in an incredible upset, 2-0. Congratulations to your Noxus Season 4 Seal Champions, Apes Together Strong.
I couldn't just leave it with us winning the championship. We have to do some type of conclusion, some type of epilogue. I definitely have to say that I can't believe we actually pulled it off. Can't believe we actually won. And even though this is just a small time league, just a couple hundred players. It's not like we won the world championship or anything. It was a pretty emotional win for me, considering everything that had happened recently in my life. My dad had died. I made a video about that. I haven't really talked about this much, but my wife has had 2 miscarriages, which had a huge impact on me. I lost my cat, who was basically my therapy animal for 15 years. He died. And then my mom died right before the season started. So yeah, this was I wasn't exactly in the best mental place going into this season. And League was kind of my escape. League is one of those type of things. Like, I've always used like video games and more creative things, music, art, movies, all that type of stuff. I've used that to kind of escape when things go bad. And League has kind of been that for a couple of years, I think at least. It's been one of my main ways of escaping, and just kind of relaxing, de-stressing, that type of stuff. So when my team started going sideways, it affected me even more because it felt like not even my escape was safe. I didn't really show how bad it got in this series, but it was bad. Like, I legit thought about leaving the team multiple times. My stress was already high enough with all the personal stuff going on and with my job and everything else that I didn't need my escape, which was supposed to be reducing my stress, increasing my stress even more. So I definitely thought about leaving multiple times during the season. However, I kind of kept coming back that, I made a promise to this team, even though I'm not enjoying it, you don't just turn tail and run just because things aren't going your way. So yeah, I made a promise to the team, and I don't take that lightly, so I decided to stick it out. And yeah, boy, am I glad that I did that. I mean, I knew we were going to make playoffs. I knew my record was good enough that we were going to make playoffs, but I assumed that we were just going to get stomped in quarterfinals and the team was going to just disband afterwards. And we were basically at the lowest of lows. Going into like the last week of the regular season, going into playoffs, we were just, nobody trusted each other. It was just bad. And then, the team actually just completely blew up, disintegrated, 3 players left. And shockingly, that was actually a good thing. That was actually a good thing. We went from that low of a low to winning the championship in less than a month. And, that was freaking euphoric. It was just, it kind of defied expectations. We were insane underdogs. We were basically the team that just had completely disintegrated, burned up, just freaking rose from the ashes. I've never heard of a team doing what we did in such a short period of time. Literally, from the moment that the team disintegrated to finals was just a little over a month, with a month and a few days. And that's really what made this season so special, and why I kind of wanted to capture it. And I'm really glad that I was able to share it with you guys. However, I didn't do it alone. So I feel like I have to thank all of my teammates for joining me on this journey, for being there, for sticking it out. It wasn't easy, and these people were really clutch. They really came in huge when the chips were on the table. So yeah, definitely want to thank all my teammates. Start off with Blaney, the top lane god. It is always a Blaney diff. The energy that you bring to this team is just freaking phenomenal. It's insane, both with regards to your personality and your gameplay. I don't think I've seen somebody 1v2 so frequently as you do, and you're absolutely clutch on your TP plays and your flanks in playoffs. You absolutely destroyed the enemy team multiple times with those flanking plays, with those TP plays. The amount of pressure that you create is ridiculous. And while it does get you killed from time to time, you are a force to be reckoned with. And the pressure you create gives the rest of the team so much spare time to work with, and so much freedom within the team fights that really allows the rest of the team to shine. You have just a ton of untapped potential, and I'm excited to see how you're going to grow not only next season, but in future seasons. So next up, I want to talk about Savagoon. You stepped up for us huge when we needed an AD carry. I know that bot lane was not your first choice, and because of that, I did not expect you to carry. Bot lane has regularly been a real point of pain for us in the past. So I was going into playoffs just crossing my fingers, just basically saying you go even in lane and you don't feed the team fights, I'm gonna be happy. I'll just be happy with that. I don't need you to carry. I just need you to just not basically shit the bed, essentially. and you fucking obliterated those expectations. Not only were you winning lanes that you probably shouldn't have, but you were hard carrying team fights, and you came up clutch in so many situations. Baron Steel in the finals, pretty ridiculous. What's even more impressive, though, at least from my perspective, is that the very few times you did fuck up, you just took full ownership, full responsibility for your mistakes, and that's huge. It shows like immense amount of maturity, especially on a team where like you're brand new. Like a lot of times, most people are really afraid to admit that they've made a mistake because they're they're worried about being judged or something like that. But you were phenomenal. You were just very mature about it, and you have no idea how big of a breath of fresh air that is. Just no ego, no drama, just straight up solid gameplay. Just a joy to be around. Cracking jokes. Felt like we've been playing for years. And the cherry on top was you helping me with my draft plans. Our finals draft would not have been, as airtight as it was without your assistance. So I definitely thank you for that. You were exactly who we needed in that role. That had been an Achilles heel for us for quite a while. Okay, next up is Uncle. So me and Uncle go back. He was our support, and he took some time off, but I had completely forgotten what playing with a great support was like. Thank you so much for stepping up when we needed you. I know how frustrated you were after the last finals that we played, and I understand you need to take a step back. But you seriously saved the team by coming back when you did. If the team would not exist, if you did not show up in kind of like our most dire hour when like everything was crumbling around us. I've been saying for years how powerful support Counterpick is, and you really are kind of the perfect support player to iterate my point. You legit have like a champion ocean, and it makes drafting so fucking free. Like, it's ridiculous how easy you make drafting because your champion pool is so huge. I know people give me a lot of credit for my draft plans, but if you did not have the champion pool that you do, my drafts would not be near as strong as they are. You have amazing insights both in and out of game. You've been a huge help in spotting flaws in my draft plans, and when team fights go sideways in game, you're always the one that's able to break things down and explain what went wrong in a really cool, calm, collected, non-judgmental way, and that is a huge gift. I think I've ever met anybody that is as good at, breaking things down without like pointing the finger at other people. So thank you for that. Last, but certainly not least, we've got Charn. So Charn, it's been a very long road for us. We are the last two people standing from the original roster at the beginning of the season, and you and I have played 3 Seal seasons together. When I compare the Charn of today to the Charn when I first joined the team, the overwhelming feeling I get is pride, just pure pride. You have grown so much as a player and as a man, and it really has been an honor to watch your transformation over these past couple of seasons. You've grown much more confident in your calls, and your calls have improved dramatically. You still outplay people on a regular basis, but the amount of mistakes that you make has been cut down considerably. Like, you're making so few mistakes compared to when we first started playing together. You've become a straight up rock, and your mental is so much better than it was. Your mental is some of the best that I've seen in a long while. You just don't get shaken, or at least you don't show it. You're still extremely young, but you progressed so much in such a short period of time that it's really exciting to think about like your potential and your trajectory if you keep pushing yourself as hard as you are. And I'm really excited to see how high you're going to go if you keep pushing yourself. We were in a really, really dark spot in the middle of the season, and I definitely did not see the light at the end of the tunnel. I definitely was looking for a way out. But you saw it. You saw that light at the end of the tunnel. You were just relentless. To see like your drive, how hard you pushed, it was inspiring. It really was. Like, you really just pushed yourself so fucking hard towards the end of the season, and it showed. You straight up would not be denied the title. Nobody was going to take it from you. And that's why you're the MVP. You are hands down the MVP this season, and you are hands down the team captain. And I definitely am looking to you to take on that leadership role next season. I feel like I've learned a lot this season when it comes to drafting. I know that like a lot of people consider me really good at scouting and drafting, but I feel like this season I've taken those strengths to like completely new levels, and I'm really excited because I feel like I still have a lot to learn. I feel like I've improved a lot, but there's still a lot more that I can learn, ways that I can get better when it comes to scouting and drafting. But I did just want to share my thoughts, share my opinions. These definitely are not facts, but this is kind of just like what I identified throughout the season as things you should definitely keep in mind if you're trying to do scouting or drafting with an amateur team. So, number one, in my opinion, jungle counterpick is the weakest counterpick in the game. I really have to like dissuade people from don't pick junglers to counter other junglers, because very few people are actually good enough to punish the enemy jungler enough, and chances are you aren't one of them. It's not disrespect, it's just facts. At the pro level, junglers can take over the game, but I've never seen a diamond or below jungler really make good use of a counter pick. I can't tell you how many times I've had junglers claim that they're better than me and that, you know, they're gonna stomp me and that it's gonna be a jungle diff and all this stuff. You know, they try to counterpick me, they devote bans towards me, and it never freaking works. It doesn't work. It's just too easy to avoid jungles. You know, you can just simply avoid the enemy jungler if you have good pathing, good jungle tracking. It's really hard to punish someone who isn't greedy, who's able to play the patient game, the long game. If you get jungle counterpick, don't use it to counter the other jungler. I recommend that you use it to counter the enemy team composition, or use that jungle counterpick to better accentuate your team's strengths. Tip number 2 is that support counterpick is far more important than ADC counterpick. Support counterpick is extremely underrated. I've been saying this for years. I'm going to keep saying it. Support counterpick is super, super underrated. I think pro teams are finally catching up on that. But for a long time, you know, people have been using support pick as just like a throwaway pick. Support pick often determines how bot lane is going to play out more than the AD carry pick. And the support pick often has a much greater impact on a team's composition than the AD carry pick. Most AD carries, you can just slot any AD carry into a team composition and it will run relatively similar. There are exceptions, but support is just wildly different. You know, from a Leona to a freaking Yumi, or, you know, a Janna or a Taric or a Xerath or a Brand. Like, these champions completely change how the composition is structured, all within a single role. So, unless you have a blind pick for support that is both extremely safe and extremely powerful, you should be trying to delay your support pick as late in the draft as you can, assuming that your support actually has a decent champion pool. If your support does not have a decent champion pool, then you may need to pick your support early, just simply because they don't have that depth in the champion pool, and they can't take those second rotation bans like some other players can. But definitely you want to try and delay your support pick as much as possible. Try to get counter pick on support. I think it's very important. So, because of the first 2 points that I made, in the majority of cases, you're going to want to pick AD carry and jungle early in the draft. There are specific cases, though, like our finals draft, when you want to either delay the AD carry or the jungle pick. So don't autopilot. That's really kind of a big takeaway. Don't autopilot, but I'd say like in the majority of cases, like you're usually going to want to be picking jungle and AD carry early in the draft. Try to delay that support pick. Try to delay those solo lane picks later in the draft if you can, because you want to try and get counter picks in those positions. All right, so number 4 is that you want to find solo laners that you can blind pick. This will take your draft to whole new levels. Blind pick solo laners are really hard to come by, but they are so powerful. They're so powerful. They're so underrated. We had quite a few of these blind picks, and it forces teams to either devote bans to those champions, or it completely changes how they have to draft in order to deal with those champions. They're really worth it. They take a lot of time and effort to figure out. You got to be playing those champions a lot in a lot of different matchups to really find what blind picks you really can truly blind pick. But it's definitely worth it. This is especially true on blue side when you're going to be forced to blind pick at least one of your solo laners. So especially on blue side, you have to have those blind picks figured out for mid and top, or it's going to bite you really, really hard. All right. Tip number 5. If a player has a small champion pool on your team, then you do not want to save them for second rotation. All right, I see this happen all the time. If you only know how to play 3 champions well or 4 champions well, do not wait until second rotation, because a good scouter, a good draft person will just pick you apart. They will ban out your champions. They will put you on something you are not comfortable with. It has happened so many times to my opponents. You always want to make sure that if you have a small champion pool, it's better to blind pick early than to risk having all of your champions banned out. All right, tip number 6. Bans are a precious resource. I see a lot of people just throwing bans around on picks that are really just kind of suboptimal. You have to be very careful how you use your bans, and you always want to be looking to maximize their impact. You only get 3 bans to start off the draft. You have to really get the most bang for your buck with those bans. You do not want to be wasting bans on people that are just kind of like, average or slightly above average on a bunch of different champions, because that one ban doesn't mean anything to them. They've got 5 or 6 other champions they can play all equally as well. You definitely don't want to ban champions that are just purely annoying, right? Unless they're just like a god on that champion, right? You really want to be looking for those champions where the player is just on a different level when they play the champion. If they've got like 1 million mastery points on one champion and then their next most played is 50,000, all right, like that's a champion you should be looking to ban. Also, you should be looking to how the team does their draft, all right? Different teams pick different roles, and you don't want to be wasting your first rotation bans in positions that they don't normally pick up until second rotation, right? If they normally are picking their jungle and their AD carry in first rotation, and they're saving their top lane and their mid lane for second rotation, prioritize those jungle and those AD carry bans over the mid and the top bans instead, because you can always ban those mid laners and those top laners in the second rotation. Those are kind of just general thoughts. Like, always study draft plans, figure out which picks do they prioritize, which roles do they prioritize, and try to maximize those first rotation bans. So that way you're like actually targeting the roles that they're going to pick in that first rotation. Okay, so tip number 7. If you are red side, whichever solo laner does not get the R5 counter pick should get first preference on the second rotation bans. I know this is kind of complicated because, drafts are weird sometimes, but I'll give you an example. So, for example, if you have a top laner who picks R3, and you plan to save your mid laner for R5, then your top laner should get to decide the second rotation ban, so that way he can better protect his R3 blind pick that you're forcing him to do. In general, like, you shouldn't be trying to ban out the role that you're saving for R5 counterpick, because you already have the counterpick. The only time you should be using a ban for that role is if you have no counterpick to that champion. And if that's the case, then you've got other problems. But in general, right, you're going to have to either R3 or R4 one of your solo lanes. So you want to try and protect that solo lane that has to pick a little bit earlier in the draft. All right, tip number 8. The R4 position, so that's the 4th pick on red side, is the weakest position in the draft. So make sure you plan ahead on who is going to be that R4 pick. You should be knowing like which role is most likely going to be that R4 pick. Not having a real solid, clear plan for R4 can just ruin your draft on red side. And for blue side, be aware that R4 is where a lot of teams botch their draft. So be looking to force them into a bad R4 pick with your second rotation bans on blue side. So the red side bans, like we were saying in the previous tip, those are used to protect that R3 or that R4 pick. The blue side bans are trying to open up an R4 that's really bad for the other team. So that's kind of some of the differences between red side and blue side. Tip number 9 is that on blue side, you have to get some major bang for your buck with your first pick. Like, remember, blue side doesn't get that extra counter pick like red side does. So you have to make up that difference with that first pick. That first pick, you ideally want it to be either a contested power pick, like an S tier champion that both teams play, or you want it to be a flex pick, something that you can flex to multiple roles. If you don't make good use of this first pick on blue side, you're going to be putting yourself at a massive drafting disadvantage for the rest of the draft. All right, last tip. Tip number 10. Flex picks are extremely powerful, but they are very difficult to execute. They are a double-edged sword. When done properly, flex picks will absolutely blindside your opponent, and they will single-handedly win you the draft. I've seen it happen so many times. But if not properly practiced, they can completely shoot you in the foot. Do not go for flex picks on the fly. You have to really practice them in every role that you intend on playing. Flex picks are only useful if you can actually flex them to multiple roles and actually play them competently in multiple roles. So you want to make sure that you practice those champions, and you also want to run those mock drafts to see how the flex pick skews your draft, because it's not just all sunshine and rainbows. It's a double-edged sword with these flex picks, but they are some of the most powerful draft tools that you can have if you do them correctly. So I'm sure a lot of you are wondering what is going to happen for next season. Is Apes Together Strong going to stay together? Can we make lightning strike twice? Well, I'm happy to let you know that yes, the team is staying together. All 5 players are returning, but we have one positional swap. Charn has decided that he wants to go back to AD carry. He used to play AD carry, then he went to top lane, then he went to mid lane, then he went to jungle, then back to mid. Now he's going to go back to AD carry. He's been getting that itch that he wants to play AD carry again. Slav is going to swap to mid lane. Slav is really happy that he's good to go to mid lane because bot lane was not his first choice. So both players are pretty happy with this change. And on paper, while it's just one positional swap, it really has changed how we're going to draft, how we're going to play. We've had to relearn drafting. We have to relearn how we play as a team, relearn how we're doing our timings and what objectives we want to play for. All of that stuff. We are a very different team than we were that you saw in this series. So that said, I do think that long term, this version of Apes will be even stronger than last season. But we need some time to figure out our new style, figure out what our draft priorities are, figure out what are the highest percentage ways that we can get victory. So even though we were really dominant at the end of last season, we aren't looking to go for anything crazy, like an undefeated run or anything this season. We've made that mistake before, and it results in burnout. It results in people not being well adjusted to losses, and it also really restricts your drafting in ways that's not healthy for playoffs. So we believe that the regular season really is a kind of more of a scouting ground for playoffs. So we aren't really looking to win every match. We're looking instead to try and gain some insight into the teams that we're facing. We want to try different draft strategies and see how the teams respond. We want to see if there's anything that we can exploit for the playoffs. We were looking for things that we can kind of keep in our back pocket for when the chips really matter and it's, win or go home, essentially. We do think that this is going to result in us losing more games, but we think that the risk of missing playoffs is pretty low. We think that we can still win enough games that we'll be able to slide into playoffs. We may not be the number one seed going into playoffs, but even if we come in as a lower seed, we do think we can run the gauntlet, make finals just like we did. And once we get to finals, I think that our drafting and our communication will win us another championship. As far as the Chasing Greatness series is concerned, I'm not sure yet if I'm going to bring it back. I will definitely be recording all of our practices and all of our matches, but I have no idea if I'm going to actually have the time to do these really highly edited videos like I did for this series. I'm happy to listen to your guys' feedback. So if you have other ideas for what I should do with our practices or what I should do with our match VODs, you can let me know in the comments below. You can also definitely always watch us on Casual EAL. It's twitch.com/casualeal. They also have a YouTube. I'll try and link in the video description below. So there's a lot of teams playing, so you're not guaranteed to see us play. But yeah, it's definitely one way that you can actually follow the team and see how we're doing. So, last but not least, I am happy to announce that we demolished the Noxian division so badly that they're not allowing us to return. The Noxian champions are now moving to Piltover. And we intend on showing these dainty teams in Piltover the true power of Noxian might. We are coming in guns blazing. We're taking no prisoners. We will not stop until the Noxian Empire stretches from Freljord to Shurima to Ionia. You guys have a fantastic day. This is Ranmodium, signing off.